Most music creators are entrepreneurs, creating and distributing their products, touring, and art each and every day. A venture capitalist named Julie Myers noted that entrepreneurs have two unique characteristics. They see the inevitable, that could be a vision for your track or project, and they're willing to live abnormal lives. Sound familiar? I hope you'll keep two things in mind as we jump into today's session. How can you approach new opportunities, especially during this time? And how do you play to your unique strengths? Today's session dives into new revenue opportunities being via digital production marketplaces and remote session bookings. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to get as many of them covered during the live Q&A, or we'll post notes down below. So I want to welcome our first two guests. Capsun is a UK producer, songwriter, and sound creator. He's known for creating original samples and compositions used by leading producers, songwriters, and underground beat makers. Capsun's the founder of Capsun Pro Audio, vocal sample company 91 Vocals, and creative director for Splice Sounds. Also with us today is Elmo Lovano, founder and CEO of Jammcard, a music professionals network. Jammcard is modernizing the music industry with their new booking platform, which we'll talk about a bit later, that allows people to get booked for remote sessions, video consultations, gigs, sample packs, lessons, and more. So thanks for joining us today. Hey, Elmo. Hey, Capsun.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Lisa. Thanks for having us.
So I just want to jump right in. Jay, could you start off by explaining what Splice is for people who may not know it, and what the business model is, and how music creators can make money?
So I think a lot of electronic artists are aware of samples, and we're aware of sampling, but not necessarily the business around sampling. Obviously, I can get more into that, and I think it's useful for musicians to know, but for people who don't use Splice already, which is crazy at this point because I see Splice in every studio I go into. But for those who haven't used it yet, what we're probably talking about today is Splice Sounds, which is the marketplace for samples, for MIDI, for plugins on rent to own, and other systems you can go through Splice to get tools for the musician. And it's a place where musicians can distribute their sounds, and musicians from people just starting out, people who are literally just getting into making music and looking for the first tools, to the highest level producers, can find sounds there, and there's literally millions of sounds. So it's an amazing resource, but it's also something that's really grown the business side for musicians as well. So I think that's an interesting thing to get into.
How do creators make money with Splice?
So the sample business as a whole, I guess we're talking about royalty-free samples here. There's a bigger conversation around samples and sampling and the different models for selling and using samples. But if we're talking about royalty-free, most samples are put on Splice by either artists who are working directly with Splice in partnership, by third-party labels, so that's independent businesses, usually run by musicians or a team of musicians who are creating sounds, which are the platform, by in-house teams on Splice, and that's third-party sound designers and also our in-house team. And there's also a huge network of live musicians, something we've done very recently, partnering with Jammcard to put a lot of live musicians to work. Which has been really cool over this period, especially. It's been something that in the last couple of months has become a huge part of what the in-house team is working with. So there's all these kind of different routes into it. It's not just the end sample. There's a lot of different teams and different ways that people get into earning revenue from the sample market for what they create.
So their revenue comes from usage. How do, if someone is figuring out how they're going to earn income, how does that happen?
So on Splice specifically, people are paying for a subscription on Splice, which gives them a number of credits that they can use per month, and those credits are redeemed against samples. And then that full credit spend over the course of a month would be divided up based on royalty splits for artists. So it can get kind of complex because it's a big marketplace, but essentially when your sound is downloaded by someone, you're getting paid a royalty for that download.
Perfect. So how did you get started with Splice? Because I know you were a DJ before you became a sound creator composer. Tell us a little bit of your backstory and how creators could make that leap.
I mean, exactly like this conversation. This is, I guess, 7-8 years ago. I was doing what everyone does, so a bit of everything, including a normal real job at a time as well. And samples was something I kind of fell into. It was something I've always done that I didn't know was something that I could make money from, to be honest. There were so many things in music that I was doing, but didn't necessarily pay anything real. You know, I was DJing at the weekend. I was producing for other people, mixing for other people. Samples was the first thing that I found that it was something I was already doing, creating my own sounds, my own melodies, essentially. I mean, I think a lot of people probably know this feeling. If you're very good at starting things, but not necessarily the best at finishing things, samples is a real good thing to try out. Even if it's not your one and only thing, you know, that we've all got those ideas that we've started and that maybe isn't for us to finish, but other people could. So this is about, I guess, 7-8 years ago, and this is prior to Splice actually existing, or at least the Splice Sounds platform. So I started out in what a lot of people probably remember, which is the kind of traditional sample market, which was selling zip files for $40, and you kind of just got a piece of artwork and a demo song, and that was about it. And then I had a little bit of success with some independent artist packs. So myself and my brother actually started our label Capsun Pro Audio, which kind of turned into this company, and we started building out a team. This was more based on us just following kind of every opportunity that came up. It was never a plan as such. We were musicians that found that these opportunities were coming up, so we kind of chased each one of them, and that grew to actually employing our friends, musicians around me that I knew were in the same position, who were looking for other ways to support their careers. So we started building out that company, and kind of fast forward that, we became the biggest independent distributed company on Splice. So obviously we got to know the guys over there pretty well, and that led to Capsun Pro Audio being acquired by Splice in 2018. And from that point, I became the creative director of Splice Sound. So I kind of took all of my knowledge from the independent side, which was trying to figure all this stuff out essentially. And, you know, when you're doing something independently, you spend a lot of time figuring out all the little things that maybe when you've got a whole industry to look at, you can't necessarily think about. So it's been really cool bringing my team into Splice and bringing that kind of like musician perspective on how we make samples and the kind of quality and creative side. And I kind of push this as well, especially for samples, that it's a really cool thing for musicians that you can take something which, if you're uniquely good at it, then someone else is probably interested in it. If it's something you particularly enjoy making, there's probably a musician out there who's also interested in that as well. So yeah, it's one of those things that I fell into in terms of like all the things you do in music. You try a bit of everything, but it's definitely something that you can jump into and go as far as you want with it, or you can just, as of kind of like right now, there's a lot of work out there that you can do kind of as much as you want it.
Yeah, so before we get into how Jammcard has been using it a little bit differently, I think when people hear about Splice and some of the other marketplaces, they think about beats. And when you and I talked the other day, we were talking about that. Now you're covering all genres of sound design, right? And can you talk a little bit about the range and the scope of the type of sound packs that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, just from the point of view, when I started, I was making, it was me and my laptop and kind of anything that I could get my hands on to record around me. But there was a whole world, you know, prior to this, which was big production companies doing sort of orchestral libraries. And there's a huge scale in terms of samples and sound libraries, and it's not necessarily different users. Like there are specific uses for those things, but it's not necessarily that like this is not useful to someone in a different part of the industry or kind of a different type of producer. I think that what people miss about something like Splice is, and I think it's just because it's something we don't talk about that much. There's such a huge scale of musicians from different diverse backgrounds, not only geographically, but also the type of instruments they play, the type of genres they work in, and also just all the way to sound designers just exploring sound, right? And I don't think you can really grab that unless you're in there looking and listening and searching through the catalog. I think maybe that purely as well, I think beat makers are superstars right now, right? I mean, that's kind of the world that I'm in. A lot of people who were would have just been looked at as beat makers a couple of years ago are now superstars. And as with any I think music platform, whatever's popular can kind of get pushed to the front. But there's so many creators who are from the highest level alternative musicians to, as I say, like sound designers doing really weird creative stuff on there. And we're talking about millions and millions of sounds. So it's more so a kind of snapshot of all of these thousands and thousands of creative people putting out what they've made, as opposed to, you can find the thing that's specific to a genre if you want to, but also sometimes that's not the best thing for what you're making, right? You want the weird, interesting thing that's going to inspire something new.
So Elmo, I understand you started creating sample packs through the Jammcard network with Splice during COVID, and they're doing really well. How are you approaching it differently via Jammcard members and collaborations and helping to really engage live musicians?
Yeah, I think pretty much through having it be more instrumentalist-based packs. So we just released a new pack today on Splice with the Wesley Theory, which is Kendrick Lamar's band. So what's really cool about it is, they use the term stacks in Splice and stuff. So you can have you can take the individual guitars or bass or drums, and you can solo out any of them, or you can use them all together playing the melody that they recorded in a stack, or you can just be like, I'm just going to use just the drums, build a track around that beat, add my own guitars or add my own bass to that. So kind of new ways for you to have building blocks and create your songs. So for me, it's about really bringing more instrumentalists into the Splice world. And the other thing that I love doing is I really like just elevating the individual musicians any way I can. So not just calling it a harp pack, but being like Laura Samoji, like you should know this harpist, and also really taking the character from the performer instead of just having it be a basic harp pack. Using someone like her who adds a lot of effects and delays and pedals to the harp, and really has her own individual unique sound, and kind of helping both helping raise their profile as a musician, independent session player, whatever you may be, and then also just kind of exploring with that instrument and pushing it further. So it's been fun. I had never, I'm unlike Capsun, I had never made sample packs before ever. I had always made records, and if I definitely got stuck and didn't release a ton of stuff and got it to 90% and then stopped. So I probably should go in my back catalog and turn those into samples. But yeah, and the other new thing is, I'm not personally, I haven't made the sample pack with myself. I'm a drummer, right? So I haven't made a drummer one yet. I've been kind of choosing a lot of my favorite people that I like working with and I think are really special in the community, and helping lift them up, getting them in a great studio, and building it with them conceptually, and like producing the pack with them. But it's been all about them, which has been cool too. So I feel like a record producer of samples. I don't know if that's a thing yet. Maybe, I don't know. Capsun, you tell me.
That's supposed to be exactly the vibe. Like,
all right, there we go.
I know the team that have worked with all the musicians from Jammcard. Like, this is exactly the point. Is it's kind of it's supposed to be the process that the best possible version of it is thinking about it like an album, or thinking about it like at least a creative project, right? It's exactly what we said. Like, it's not just a harp pack. The whole point is telling the story of that artist. Like, it's wrapping it around what they do creatively, and like presenting that in the best way, because you're presenting to other musicians, right? It's not just presenting to listeners, it's also the story of what you make for other musicians. That's kind of part of the fun of making sample packs in the way that we do anyway, is like featuring those musicians and also collaborating during a project. That's what makes it interesting. And like, invariably that's the best result, right? If you've enjoyed it during the process, and when you're recording, you're like, yeah, this is awesome, right? This is going to come out good. You know you got it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely does feel like making an album, which has been really interesting, and releasing it kind of has felt similar, but it's cool because you can release it and have thousands or millions or whatever of people work on it and turn it into their own thing. If they take a one shot, they can easily make it their own thing, but they could take a loop and just kind of affect it or build around it or on top of it or whatever. So that's what's really cool. And we're only a few months in on our sample label. Today was our 6th pack release, so it's still super new, and it's fun hearing things like come around and hearing the samples being used and stuff. So I'm sure you're at the point where you're hearing stuff all the time. You're like, oh yeah, I know that. But
it's awesome cool. that Capsun said the other day when I said, how do you with a library that large, what makes things unique? And one of the things you said, Capsun, to me that was awesome was the character and the layers and then the own uniqueness of that creator. And I think it's so important as people, look at a marketplace and see so many people doing it, and how do you stand out and how do you make it different?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, because the projects we're talking about with Jammcard, because we're talking about elevating pro musicians who are kind of, at the highest level, and we want to make sure that we kind of do justice for that. We're doing these really high end sessions. We're making sure that they're mic'd in the best way. Like, do you know what I mean? We're producing them to that level. But that's like one option, right? This is just essentially music at the end of the day. These are small inspirational pieces of audio. So I think it's the part that is unique is not necessarily just musically what it is. It's also the way it's been recorded or the way it's been processed. So it's just as useful or like interesting for someone who's recorded guitar on their phone in their bedroom, who knows how to work with that and process it. And like, I don't know if it's now to get into it, because there's definitely work on the production side of sample packs that kind of there's some set rules about it. Just in terms of like quality and standards, right? Just because you've got to do those things because you're presenting something to people that essentially it's just making it as easy as possible for them to use, right? It's just having the information in it that they need, things like BPM and key, and having interesting naming. Like, in the same way that you present any project, you want to hit all the details, right? And it's the same thing with audio, thinking about like normalizing right and not having horrible pops and clicks and stuff like that. Like all the things that you wouldn't want to have in audio. But if you can do all those things, you don't necessarily have to go out and spend a load of money hiring a studio and getting the right mics and stuff. You can just be doing these things in your bedroom. But that's literally how I started. Was like, when I say the things around me, I mean I was in my bedroom recording, like hitting deodorant cans with a pen and stuff, and making percussion hits and stuff. And like, that was just because that's what I had around me. But because I'd been thinking as a producer for a while, and it's kind of what I've been doing anyway, right? I knew how to make that stuff useful and usable. I think it's definitely that there's no level of entry for this. If you are making something that is useful to other producers or to other musicians in any way, and this comes for like Foley and found sound and stuff as well, and there's scales and all these things, from like the super pro high level stuff, but then the stuff that you can make in your bedroom or with your housemates or whatever it is. And that doesn't have to be to the highest standards. If you get all the other things right, those kind of quality control and checking things, the audio itself can be anything. Like, I find the most unique layers are things that aren't recorded perfectly some of the times. Like, if that's not what you're looking for, sometimes, if especially for people who have the facility to do it, like if you tend to work in a studio where you have great sound and you've got go-to microphones and stuff, sometimes the thing that someone recorded in their bedroom is super interesting that I wouldn't think of a way of doing it, or it has kind of like weirder, interesting textures or whatever. So I want people to know that like there is no barrier for entry. Like, you don't need to have things to do it. Like, you can have a basic setup, and as long as you're thinking about what you're best at and what you enjoy making more, and like just going the extra mile to present it in the best way possible, then like there's options there for everyone to get in and actually make money. Like, it's something we should talk about, right? It's something that musicians can do. You can get out there and you can make money now from selling sounds. It's a market that's kind of exploded, especially over the last couple of years. And there's opportunities as well. I guess I don't know if you want to get into it now, but like, we talked a lot about Splice. I also want to make it clear for people as well that Splice has become the go-to for this. And it's, I say this as someone who's personally involved in the way it's developed. We've done that in a really sensitive way to musicians and to artists, and making sure that that's shared with them as well. But there is a world out there as well where you can sell directly to fans. If you're streaming, if you're running a website, if you have an email list, if your social media is on point, like any of those things, even if it's a small engaged fan base, if you're making things, you can sell directly to them. You don't have to be on the platform. Like, the platform will come find you if you're doing something interesting or great, but it's like, it's something you can do right away, and you doesn't have to be perfect right away. You can kind of level up to that point if you want to.
Yeah, so that was actually my next question, is what's your best advice for musicians, producers, DJs, music creators wanting to get into creating sample packs and custom sounds? How do you get started?
I think Elmo can probably talk for musicians, because like there's a really great way through with Jammcard, but also like it's opened up for us how much we can work with musicians regularly. Like, we've worked with session musicians as a sample company and as sound designers, I mean, fairly continuously, but it's not something where we go to constantly for packs with someone getting a session musician in, as opposed to like, I didn't know this huge network of musicians that was like on the other end of an app like existed. Like it's been amazing since I didn't realize until we started looking into it. So yeah, I think for musicians, there's ways in to work with labels. For specifically producers, for anyone that's creating audio, you can, it's kind of the roots I just said, like if you want to present directly to your audience, you can do that, and there's nothing stopping you doing it. There is a kind of weird underbelly gray area of samples, which anyone in that side knows of, is kind of the recycling of sounds or the reusing of sounds. That it's a big topic to get into, but assuming that you're making what you're selling, that you know what you're making is original, that you're creating it, that you're doing it the right way, you can sell direct. You could go and work with a third-party label. So a third-party label, we're part of Splice now, but there's plenty of third-party labels who distribute on Splice, who also have independent websites as well. Reach out. Like we read every email we get from people. I think people sometimes think we don't. We get a lot now. I mean, I try to respond to everyone because it's just me a couple of years back, right? So we try to respond to everyone, but we do read everything and we do listen to everything. It's worth reaching out and doing that the same way you would a record label, the same way you would just presenting yourself in a way that you would as a musician anyway. So it's having a CV of what you've done, having an easily listenable set of audio, like presented in a way that people don't have to click through a ton of links and then, you know, download a gigabyte file or something. Like make it easy and people will listen. There's working directly with Splice. So Splice work with third-party sound designers, which is essentially producers with experience in making sample packs, but also we've been making a lot of moves to try and develop people as well. There was a kind of existing industry already, but that doesn't take into account all the people that like haven't heard this conversation, right? Who just simply aren't aware. We don't just want people that have already worked with someone so we can work with them. There's no reason why we shouldn't be the first people they work with. And also we're sharing like this years of collected knowledge about how we figured out how to do this stuff with my whole team at Splice. So we're kind of sharing that. So yeah, as I say, there's working directly, like selling directly to your fans. There's things like, you know, you can set up a self-fi store, you can sell e-commerce on your website, you can work with a third-party label, whether that be distributed on Splice or one of the other websites. You can work directly with Splice, which is a matter of reaching out to the team. Or there's distribution as well. It's kind of more complicated to get into the distribution side because that's more of a business partnership because there's bigger labels, and also obviously on the artist side, depending on the scale of that artist, there are specific deals in place. But my advice would be make stuff, make it as good as possible and as professional as you can. Have a good story about who you are, at least your story about who you are, and reach out to people. Like I think in samples, out of anything in music, people will probably get back to you because it's other musicians just doing this, right? So it's worth reaching out as much as you can.
There was this a question that came in from the board that says, do you recommend mastering samples before uploading?
It depends what you mean by mastering. I would
gaining
yeah.
all the way.
Yeah, putting it through a chain.
Yeah, if you mean smashing everything, then probably not. Although sometimes useful. What we think of as kind of audio checking, or at least what our final point is, doesn't necessarily involve any kind of processing as such, other than we will normalize everything to the same level. So we go for like minus 1.7 dB, just because it gives you a little bit of headroom. You know that nothing's clipping past that point. It just gives a kind of part of its uniformity across that many sounds, right? When you're listening to a bunch of sounds, you don't want things jumping out or kind of, you know, not being or sounding weak if you know, just because it's lower in volume. But yeah, it's literally normalizing, getting rid of pops and clicks, getting rid of any unnecessary audio kind of before or after your sample, making sure you have nice fades. But there's no standard for finishing audio. I mean, part of that is just sound design. If we're talking about drum samples, that's down to you to whether they sound, you know, however you want them to sound. That's kind of the point. That's the sound design. So yeah, there's no straight answer to that, but there's kind of best practices, I guess.
Another question that came in is, when it's time to make the next pack, how do you decide on the theme that you're going for, or do you just start playing something and see what happens?
So I reckon I mean, I was literally doing this earlier today. I have about a year's worth of pack ideas written down. I had them in my phone. I've just recently swapped them over to a document because I'm trying to be a professional, right? So I just had them in notes for ages and lost a lot of them. all I do is generally is I'm thinking about concepts and names, which are quite difficult for sort of genre-based packs, because I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? I'm trying to watch trends, but also be ahead of the game, because when we're creating packs, we're sometimes, I mean, usually around 6 months ahead from when we're making something. So I don't want to be behind the curve, which is why we never do sort of super on the nose, like what's hot right now. I always try to think a little bit more story based or theme based than just straight, genre names, which is, I think that's kind of a lost art anyway in sample packs anyway. We've kind of moved on to people want more character, right? Generally, if I'm thinking about a genre style pack, I'm thinking about what the sound of it is, what the vibe of it is. Vibe is probably the biggest thing. We base things on the feel as opposed to the instruments or the genre, and then I'll start thinking about artwork. I usually do artwork prior to a pack, or have artwork done by our designers, because it's the same thing as an album, right? If you have no direction, it might come out and it might be amazing at the end, right? It might be, but also you might get lost somewhere in the middle because you don't really know where you're going with it, or you might end up with 100 tracks and you've got to find where this is pulled together, right? Generally, we try to think about it like this is the concept. Try and get an artwork there, especially when we're working with a sound designer, so I can talk them through. Like, my job has become accidentally getting people excited about what it could be, because I know they're able to make the sounds, but I don't want it to be a throwaway thing on the side of a music career, right? You want it to be as important to you as the music you're making, because that musicians see that, right? They see the effort, they see that it's something that you kind of thought about, and it's something they can tap into. So feel, I guess, is the best thing. Whatever the feel of it is, go off that and think about names and artwork, and the vibe of it.
No, that makes total sense. You need to have the vision, just like if you were putting out an album. Last question. I think you've answered this a little bit, but someone asked, how do I become a creator on Splice?
So yeah, there are different ways to do it. The easiest way right now, in terms of if you have something to show, would be to get directly in touch with creators. I think it's creators@splice.com. I'm not 100% sure on that email. We do have a submissions email, but
we'll put it down below.
Yeah. As I say, be ready with like something to show. Like we are listening and we are open, but the best thing to do is to have thought about it and to put some work in. And look, all you've got to do is look. If you're a Splice user, look at what works, what you like. You don't have to copy it, but like all of the framework of how to build out something is right there. So you can definitely get pretty close, but like send something interesting and unique, and we'll definitely check it out.
Awesome. Elmo, I know we're going to talk about advice for people as we go, but any last bit of advice, Capsun, before we leave, for people who are really thinking about diversifying what they do? You said something the other day that I thought was really interesting, in terms of that there is no step-by-step to, becoming a musician or being a working musician. And so if you want to diversify and do this, any kind of one last piece of advice?
Yeah, I think that's been probably my most useful realization through doing all of this, is like we all have a version of having a career in music and what that might be. Like my version now at 33 is nothing like what it was when I started when I was 13. And I guess when I got into samples, I thought I was going like off on a tangent over here. And instead what's happened is I made something creatively that meant something to other musicians, who I guess I cared about more about what musicians thought than maybe people listening. And it's brought me background, right? There's all these musicians that now know what I've done over the last few years, who know my sounds. If I go into studio, people probably have something I made on their laptop already, which is just like, that's not, it's just a weird thing that happened, right? I wasn't expecting that to be a thing. I guess it's really important to just remember that like there isn't a way that you become a professional musician. Like there's no route. Like everyone I speak to has a different version of how it's gone and is still doing a different thing now. And it seems to change regardless of what stage of your career you're at. New things come up and you kind of grab new opportunities, and that takes you to meet new people and things you weren't expecting. It's a weird time right now. Like half my friends are completely out of work who were doing a lot better than me prior to this, right? And I'm reaching out to my friends right now and literally giving work to them, which is weird. but like everyone who wasn't doing this has the opportunity to do it. I think it's worth right now just being brave with doing things that don't necessarily feel like what you're supposed to do as a musician, but if it gets you to where you want to be, then it's kind of all the same thing, right? It's just for you. So yeah, grab the opportunities while they're there.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for joining us and for sharing a little bit about Splice today. And we hope to talk to you again soon.
All good. Thanks, Lisa. Elmo.
So Elmo is staying with us to explore remote booking sessions as we welcome our guests to dive in further about how to leverage remote work. I want to introduce Nicole Rowe, bassist for Panic at the Disco. Nicole is involved in the music industry from touring sessions, a gig musician. She has 10 years, including headlining festivals and international tours alongside some of the largest artists in the world. She's an LA resident, although not right now. We're going to learn about what you're doing now. She loves to share her passion for bass, teaching lessons, educating students in her free time. Also up, Izzy Fontaine, are you with us? I hope so.
Hey, I'm here.
Anyway, there you are. Izzy's a musician, songwriter, producer, also based in LA. He started his music career playing in churches at 12 years old. And in 2009, he joined Taking Back Sunday on guitar and keys, which has him touring globally. After spending several years as a touring musician and a music director for Seal and Banks and many others, he's now been in the studio songwriting and producing, one of which is America's Got Talent, Bonavega.
Yeah.
That has to be fun.
Yeah.
So welcome. We want to hear all about the things that you're doing during this crazy time to make a living and to share it with some of the people who are with us today. But first, Elmo, what is Jammcard booking and how are creators making money?
Hi, Lisa. Jammcard. So Jammcard is a network of music professionals, currently all entirely in the United States, although working on expanding soon. So if you're in the US, you can use Jammcard right now. Jammcard booking we released at the end of April, smack dab in the pandemic, as a way. I mean, I'm a professional drummer, toured for years as well, made a bunch of records. I'm kind of on a mission of like getting musicians paid fairly, paid on time. Been wanting to do that for a long time. Where Jammcard has been for the last 3 years since it came out was building the network side of it, the social side of it. We do have a vetted social network of all pros in the industry, and that kind of became like a hub for people to find creatives to work with on their tour, on their record, or whatever it is. And now that we've successfully done that, the next step we really wanted to tackle was payments. And getting everyone paid fairly. Then at the same time, the pandemic hit. So we were like, okay, how do we get our members work? And so we had already been building Jammcard booking for probably a year at that point when we finished it leading into the pandemic, or finished it. It's still a work in progress, still building it right now. But that's what's cool about tech. It's not like an album where you put it out and you're like, I can't edit it. I can't remix it. Now you can, with the tech is like a baby that you can just water and grow. But so we really wanted to find ways to where we can help people make money during this time, especially. So the focus moved from helping people get on tours and getting them paid that way, and it kind of moved into having them do remote recording sessions, which is the new, as Nicole and Izzy can tell you all about. So remote recording sessions, which already existed, but now it's like your option. So that's the big difference and shift in culture. And then on top of that, also using all these members as mentors and educators, and being able to either teach the instrument that they play, or just teach you about the business and how to get to wherever you're trying to get. So, because essentially we have these thousands of incredible people in the network, and a lot of people strive to be at the level in which these people are. So who better to learn from than them? You know, not just music, but also business, how to get there, how to book tours, how to build your home studio, how to whatever, right? So you can learn from a lot of your favorites. And then, so we launched Jammcard Booking as a platform to help get you extra work, make ancillary income, and get you paid on time. So if you get booked through Jammcard and you do the booking through there, you will never get stiffed. We charge the booker ahead of time, hold the money in escrow, and then when you're done with the gig, we send it right to you. So that's a nice thing because musicians are used to chasing the money owed to them for half the time of our lives. So getting rid of that. Step one, no more chasing money. And also putting it at the front of the convo. So when you book someone on Jammcard, you send them a booking request with an amount, and then the member pro can agree to it. And then you lock the payment and it gets paid. Cool. Now you can just talk about your music. You can do the session. You can do whatever it is. You can work on the creative concept and just know that the money's locked. You do your work, you send it to them, and the money just comes to you. Kind of like Uber, you know, the best part of Uber is not having to like do I don't want to touch your credit card machine, that whole thing. So
I love that you had it on your product roadmap, but you got it out during COVID. It's awesome. So Nicole, how are you working remotely and thriving as a musician during this time? I know that you're not in LA right now.
No.
You're figuring out how to make it happen.
I mean, I feel like I'm a special case because I'm either a homebody or I like to be traveling. So it kind of works out perfect for me. I am doing a lot of the remote sessions and online lessons, which all kind of came together really smoothly with Jammcard, with the release of that. Yeah. Got a lot of lessons booked on there, like right off the bat.
You were actually one of my first calls. It's funny because Izzy was actually one of the first people I ever even told about like the idea of Jammcard like years ago. So, and then when we were like, okay, let's release Jammcard, Nicole was one of my first calls too. And it's good, you know, building together with friends. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
and keeping people collaborating. It's, you know, it's such a great tool for that. So Izzy, I understand you decided to focus on producing right when COVID started. So how's that transition? How's that transition for you?
It was like a be careful what you wish for kind of feeling, because I was so burnt out touring all the time and kind of, you know, just doing the old thing. And it really was something where I was feeling like I would love to create the music that kind of lives in a different format forever. And so started to kind of convert home into a studio and make everything kind of be on that track. And then you know, still doing the gigs here and there, and then it kind of turned into, okay, so now this is what's happening. So full throttle into doing that, and it's been really, really incredible.
So you're running sessions with multiple creators. How are you rigged up over there? I hear you added fiber into the house.
I definitely appreciate a good clean internet situation, and I know that plugging in is a huge piece of elevating your speed. And so I kind of was always looking to see if I was eligible to get fiber in my area, and it was like some people had it up the street, but I couldn't have it it's such an interesting thing. So finally it was available, got it installed, and now it's like piped in, and it's such a blessing.
So as you're looking at doing remote bookings, and we've got, you know, Elmo, I want you to share all the different types of bookings, from, you know, what Nicole is doing with, you know, teaching, to doing session work, to people calling and wanting to do mentorships, things like that. What do the creators also have to do to market themselves? Like, Nicole and Izzy, what are you both doing to kind of get the word out, besides, you know, leveraging Jammcard, obviously?
It's a good question. I don't feel like I have a straight answer for that. I mean, I didn't do it intentionally right off the bat. I just kind of threw the idea out there and, you know, got a lot of response, you know, because I think a lot of people are also sitting at home twirling their thumbs too. You know, people are looking for a lot of like creative connection right now. And all the musicians I know through Jammcard and through all these other sources, you know, are all just kind of going, what do I do right now? And so everyone's kind of coming together and, you know, trading, skills like lessons or creating together. And we kind of have more opportunity to do it now. We don't all have to be in the same, area to do it. Like I've started working with people I've never met before. And it's just, I've seen a lot of growth in myself too, just from this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely been a really, I always try to see the positive in what's happening, and everyone being home at the same time is really incredible. Like Nicole was saying, like a lot of people that I would never be able to talk to because, they're on a tour and we're on a different side of the planet or whatever. It's like, hey, you want to just FaceTime and just talk about stuff? And, it's just being able to talk to some of these people that are my heroes, but also friends, has really been incredible to, we have a lot of time to sit and think, and, just finding wisdom from friends has been really helpful to, see how, like you're saying, kind of see what other people are doing, and, try to take a piece of knowledge here and there to try to figure out the path that's best for, what I'm doing. And it's definitely been tricky to not be always in the place with the people, but trying to make the environment of the internet with the homework done to make it as simple as possible to, hey, here's my music, use this app, do these things, and it should, come right through your speakers, lossless audio, trying to make all those interactions be really simple and smooth. I try to write a directions list and send pictures of everything to do. So it's just do these. Now we're in the session. And once you're in it, it feels a lot more, locked. Like you're saying, it's hard, sometimes you meet a person on the thing, but once you're locked in, it can be really incredible.
That is definitely one of the unintended benefits of this time, is being able to reach out to people and connect, because we're not traveling all over the world. Elmo, will you do me a favor? Share with us some of the types of bookings that people have opportunities to leverage during this time, and maybe some of the most interesting ones that you've seen so far.
For sure. So I guess one thing that we wanted to do in the approach of building it was make it so the professional could offer any service that they wanted to, right? So maybe they want to do remote recording, they can offer that and set a price to it. Maybe they're not into remote recording and they just want to work solo, but they're down to teach someone or mentor somebody. Maybe they're down to there's even private Zoom gigs happening now where people are getting hired to play Zoom gigs, that whole new, so, but so I really wanted the approach with it was make it so Izzy or Nicole could offer whatever services they want to, not make it so they have to do these ones, or we have these few options, but it can also, like someone got booked for a private in-person show, like an isolated show the other day in a castle. And they did it safe somehow, because I think the castle's so big that there's no COVID, so everything's so far. And then so there's things like that happening. And then what I think is cool on the user side, the booker side, is anyone in the U.S. for now can jump on if you're a student, and you want to learn from, Izzy or Nicole or any of these people. Some of these people are in your favorite bands. Some of them have written some of your favorite songs. Now more than ever, people are kind of available, and a lot of people that maybe wouldn't do these kind of services pre-COVID are now like, I'll do it, Either A, they need money, they need some extra money, it's as pretty much we all need some, if this is going to keep going, we need to, everyone needs money. Or a lot of people that are getting on it also just like really enjoy giving back and like spreading positivity and happiness and inspiring people. And that's why they mentor on there. Maybe they don't need the cash, but they like pushing the knowledge forward, And so there's just like this really cool opportunity for students or hobbyists or music lovers to just go on Jammcard and find these people and book them. Maybe they don't care about like, I want to, about playing guitar, but they actually want to hear your tour stories about touring with this artist or whatever it is. And they're down to pay you $100 for 30 minutes to hear it. And you're like, okay, so there's been some unique, I'm sure Nicole's had some of those.
So speaking of that, we've got a couple of questions for our artists. Izzy, are you doing real-time recording via internet through a digital workstation, or working with stems and flying in vocals?
Yes. Any and every way, really, because some people are like, maybe they're not the engineer type. Maybe they don't use computers. Maybe they write strictly and someone else takes care of that. So trying to like, okay, maybe, hey, put your iPhone down, put down 2 of them, put them in stereo, and just press record. I'll look in the thing and fly in something else, and just whatever process works for people is what I'm kind of down to do. I mean, I was like doing a lot of musical directing and stuff like that, and using Ableton a bunch, and so sometimes I would work with an artist live, and they would give me here's the stems, just figure it out. How do we make it feed onto the thing? And so it's kind of the same thing now, just with working with someone remotely. I'll just kind of be like, hey, try to set these things up, and then I'll send them a video on how to do something else, and try to help just elevate their knowledge so that it makes life easier for everyone.
What's the most challenging aspect? This is for really all of you, but for Nicole and Izzy in particular. What's the most challenging aspect of remote recording sessions?
Maybe the communication, but I feel like that almost just makes it more of a kind of, with Elmo, we just did this, just more of like a, here you go, do something.
It's a lot more in the dark, right?
Yeah.
So as putting my producer hat on, normally if I'm going to have Nicole come in for a session, I'm calling Nicole because I like her style, I like her sound. I know like a realm of what she's going to do. She'll come in and she can lay the take, we can massage the take, we can get it into the right place. Now it's like, here's the track. All right, I sent Nicole did a session with me a couple of days ago via remote for Jammcard, and then she sent me. It's pretty much like, I trust you. What do you? And then she sends it back, and it's like, okay, cool. With that particular one, she nailed it. But with other ones that I've done, even on that particular session, we have like 7 musicians on this one session, all remote, everyone in different places. They're sending it in, and usually it's like they'll send me just one take, and I'm like, okay, cool. Change this. Typically it's easier. I'm like, just don't even send me like an MP3 bounce of that I can just hear real quickly, just to even make sure the idea is there before you bounce all your stems out and send me all the new stems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's make sure the idea is there. Okay, cool. Now we can get into stems and do all that in terms of like file sharing and trying to save everyone's time. So it's kind of cool. That you get to have that opportunity to give more. It forces you as a musician to dive in even more to the song and really feel like, okay, what do I want to do on this before I send it to someone, compared to maybe being in the studio, you're just trying things and you're getting real-time feedback. I'll try something else. Being like, okay, what's my approach with this? Okay, here's something,
That's interesting.
I got a session last night from a different remote session, and the keys player sent me 13 takes. She was like, here's 13 takes of the bridge. I'm like, oh, little too much. All are great. Now I got to choose. But now I'm like going through comps. Oh man. But and now I feel like I'm in a session again. Okay, here we go. So there are things, as this continues, it's becoming more normal, right? And so we're all going to get better at it, right? We're all getting better at it. I'm learning every day how to do it, how to do it better, how to streamline it. There's more and more tools coming out. There's more collaboration tools, whether you're Splice and you're grabbing sounds, or you're going to Jammcard because you want like a custom sound from that musician instead of just the sample that is available already. So there's ways to do it. And then Izzy's probably got all the special tricks of different multi-cam setups to do session. I know one thing that we figured out via Zoom that was really helpful. That's actually a new thing that we're going to start offering on Jammcard is you could book a session. Tell me if you've ever done this yet, Izzy. Let's say you're a singer, for all the singers watching this, and so you know how to record yourself. You got your basic system through Logic or something, but you don't really know how to like EQ your vocal great. Right? So you could go into Jammcard or hit up Izzy or someone that knows how to do this, book a vocal producer, get on Zoom with them, switch their controls, have them control your Zoom, right? Through Zoom, have them control your Logic session, EQ your vocal, and get your vocal on your laptop into a clean place, and then be like, cool, I'm out. And that's like 15 minutes, and you can pay a vocal producer for a 15-minute, throw them $100, $200, do something like that. And then now you got your vocal in a nice EQ, and that's a new thing that wasn't happening pre-COVID. At
Why
least
was
that's
that not happening before?
I know, right?
because especially with Zoom now, they made it because you can have it so you can hear their audio instead of just coming through the laptop. You can hear it you can hear their audio out of your laptop. So that makes it a lot. You can EQ better and stuff like that. So I don't even think Zoom is intending these use cases that we are figuring out for them. So I think we should all have Zoom.
The reason why it didn't happen before is because every big problem has a big opportunity, and that's really what's
100%.
That was one. So there's all new hacks that we're all figuring out.
The remote control thing is really huge. That's definitely been a large part of what I've been doing as a producer. Is I'll just try to be fluent in as many programs and things that I can, so that if someone's like, I only have Logic or GarageBand, and I only have my iPhone, I'll be like, all right, cool. Get your GarageBand app, do these things, and send me these stems. We'll, just try to make it easy as possible. But to answer your question in terms of the hardest thing, I would definitely say it's the latency that is inherent in this version of the internet that we have right now. It just can't do it. As fast as we can get it, it's still I can't play with another person live, and that's like a huge but like everyone's saying, it's incredible to get stems from people just that are like, hey, I'll put my whole spin on it, and here you go. And once it's pre-productioned a little bit and you have what you want, just to be able to have their whole rig at your disposal rather than come over to the studio, I got a guitar, we can pipe in a sound. It's like you have everyone's full workstation ability, whatever that may be at the time. So that's pretty incredible too. I keep saying things are incredible, but I'm trying to look on the bright side of every problem.
Pretty you know what?
But that's what this is. That's what this is about. This is about finding the silver lining, finding different ways to make a living. Our first session was about live streaming, and we had an artist who said he never thought he would ever live stream, and he thinks that even when this is done, when he's on the bus, because he can reach so many more people, he's going to continue to do it. So we're learning along the way. Believe it or not, we are almost coming up on an hour. So I want to just ask one more question of each of you, which is, what is your best advice or tip for music creators during this time? And then Elmo, if you can tell people how they can get involved with Jammcard before you go.
Great. Okay. For sure. First of all, you can get involved by Jammcard, get involved with Jammcard by going on jammcard.com, 2 M's, one word. And you can apply to join if you're a music professional, you're a full-time active pro. That's what we look for in terms of being a member, but anyone can go in and create an account and book people and learn and work with them, collaborate, all that kind of thing. So check it out. And if you're international, we're working on it. Got some ideas. Biggest piece of advice, I would say, right now, the thing I'm just telling myself is just stay positive and stay inspired, but also I think don't put too much on yourself, too many pressures on yourself. You may not have the same output that you had before this, and that's okay. Right now, I think the main thing for a lot of us is that we need to stay afloat, and we need to keep moving and make sure you got your bills and your family and your friends dialed in, and I would say for me personally, and these aren't even, I don't know, these are all things that lead to creativity. It's not necessarily the creative thing itself, but keep a bubble around you that you can. If you can see some people, that helps me a lot. I don't know, I'm an extrovert, so it's really hard, but I really like being around people. So finding ways to still be around people. The worst part of this for me is not being able to jam. Obviously, I love jamming. I haven't been able to jam with another human in a really long time. That sucks. I'm working creatively and collaborating in new ways, but not that raw.
Yep.
Raw jamming.
I don't know. I've heard your virtual jam's awesome.
The virtual one was still good, but it's different. But and
get there.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you could do right now isn't release music. If you are, that's cool. I think the best thing you could do right now is work on you. You dive in deep. We've never been given a pause like this before. So whether you are learning Ableton, Logic, or Pro Tools, great, or you are learning how to EQ better or mix better, or you are learning your instrument deeper, or you're learning how to read music because you didn't know how to do that before, or you're learning a new instrument, or like whatever it is, like now is the time to kind of like rethink you. And so when we do start coming out of this, if you can have your plan and be ready for that, then we'll be good, you know? Yeah. So,
you know, I have an unfair question I want to sneak in there. How are people defining what they're worth on a booking session? Like, what's 15 minutes of a lesson worth versus, I mean, session work is pretty much well priced, but how do you decide that?
It's the same thing as valuing a tech company, right? It's you are worth what the person is willing to pay for. So, what's cool is at this moment in Jammcard, you don't write your price. So someone makes you an offer. Right.
Got it. So perfect.
They can make you an offer. They can be like, hey, will you do this for $100? And you could be like, you can write them back, I'll do it for 150. And then they say, cool. And then you set the deal and then you accept and confirm. Right. So I would just kind of see what comes in. A couple things: create your Jammcard account if you're not on it, get your profile up, make a post on social media, try to get awareness that you're even on there. There's still people that are browsing and can find you as well, but also, you know, link in bio and like all those kind of things to try to steer traffic your way. You can see what offers are coming in, you know, or you can even just make a post and kind of just be like, yo, for this week, I'm going to do this for $200, $100, 30 minutes for $50, whatever it is. I'm not trying to set any sort of price. There's people that are, things that are shockingly affordable on Jammcard right now. And then there's things that are really expensive. Someone just got booked the other day for $30,000 for one booking. So I was like, oh, not the norm, but like that's happening. And then there's people that are doing like $40, like, yo, let me jump in and help you real quick. And I'm helping you for 20 minutes. And that's worth the $40. You make a quick, you know, you can make a couple $100 that day. You know, you can go in and work for a couple hours, make a couple $100. You're good. You got your rent. Okay. Cool. You know, it all depends on what your goals are, and it's different for every person.
Yeah, and it's really important. You know, one of the things, another reason pro sessions was so important is we're trying to encourage people to understand that they have value. And I know a lot of people feel really badly about asking for money, right? Particularly creators. Yeah. And Facebook and Instagram are great for self-promotion, but at the end of the day, if a fan was going to go see you live, they would be paying. And so, you know, making sure that you get the value that you deserve is really important. Okay, Nicole, Izzy, best advice before we head on out.
Nicole, do you want to take it first?
Sure. Okay, I guess something that's kind of helped me is remembering that this isn't like a forever situation, right? It's kind of like hard to think about that because we don't see an end to anything right now, but like using this time, like seeing it as almost like an opportunity, right, to kind of jump into something a little bit different than your norm. And for me, like doing that, and then also reaching out to people that you wouldn't think to, you know, because I guess it can be kind of weird to be like, just send somebody a message and be like, hey, right, like I'm probably gonna hit Izzy later, be like, yo, you want to like
yeah, for real.
You know, but
we all
like,
got time now.
Yeah, like do that because other people are looking to collaborate and create too, you know, so you'd probably be surprised what you find.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'd say learn the technology. If there's something that you've been putting off learning, but it's like it might really elevate your ability to participate in everything that's going on worldwide, then maybe take, you know, that day and just be like, I'm gonna learn how to use OBS or something so that I can just try to learn one more little piece of the puzzle so that you can be available or ready if someone's like, hey, do you have a Zoom thing? Can you plug in and play it? And you know how to make it go from your instrument straight into the iPhone that's, you know, with a good Wi-Fi, you know, try to learn all those things so that you can be ahead of the game and, you know, be available and efficient at it.
And you guys killed
that. And with that, treat it like work. You know, you can make, there's Twitch, there's Jammcard, there's Splice, there's a bunch of other platforms. There's like all these platforms, but you got to put in the time, you know, like if you want to make money on it, you want to get by with it, have that make your living, you can, but you can't just be like, cool, you know, you got to do like 10 hours a week on that platform, you know, like whatever it is, you know, and it'll come back to you, but you got to invest in it.
Yep.
That is great advice. And also, Elmo, thank you for being on the Recording Academy events and donating your time on some of the board events. We really appreciate it. You guys, you killed it. 1 hour exactly. I'm going to bring in Nicole from Berkeley. It was great talking to you today. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge and experience with everyone in Pro Sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
That was incredible. Such good input, and also just draws attention to how well-rounded these artists are thinking about it. It's the lessons, it's the samples, it's the sessions. They're really not to evoke our name, but they are definitely thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs and approaching their careers entrepreneurially. So yeah, thanks, Lisa, for having us. This was a great session.
Yeah, and you can invoke your name. I think it's really important for creators to really be thinking with an entrepreneurial mindset. They are entrepreneurs, no matter what they're doing. They wake up every morning and figure it out and create something and sell it.
Yeah, well, thanks again. I'm Nicole. I run Berkeley's Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship. And in a few weeks, we're going to do another one of these. And we're going to be featuring some Berkeley alumni as well. The topic is going to be exploring revenue opportunities and platforms for online music instruction. And I thought the conversation around value and thinking about sort of how you value your time in this new COVID and post-COVID economy is so important. So we're going to be hearing from a lot of artists who have opened up their, dance card for online music instruction and are connecting with people both local, but then of course, really wide. Some are using, just sort of hacking together tools that they've used themselves and connecting with students, and others are using professional, online education systems. So come back August 26th, I think, and learn about that. And you can learn more about the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship at Berkeley College. We are at berkeley.edu/ICE. Lisa, thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being such a great partner. And for more Pro Sessions, if you want to sign up to the mailing list so you don't miss any of these, and to view prior Pro Sessions, visit Grammy.com/Pro Sessions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.